Hello and welcome to Tales of the Unberechenbar with Wildcard Zombie Dylan one more time. Now we did try this last month, and well it didn't work out too well, so we're going to go again. This guest today, former multi-time women's champion, travelled all over the country, up and down, winning matches, losing matches, and just basically being a great character all around. And regardless of what I say about her on on screen, she's actually a good friend of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, Leonie Rose.
Oh, thank you for that introduction, Tommy. I appreciate it. And hopefully this time everything will run smoothly.
Yeah, well, the wires are in and it's stuck. We're not going to lose anything this time. So, as I always say, we're going to go right back to the beginning. I've done it with everybody so far. It's a case of when you leave school, you're supposed to have a plan. What was your plan? Was it wrestling, or is there something else beyond what we see on screen for Leonie Rose? Just however long you need to take, just tell us the story from your point of view.
Well, when I left school, I wanted to be a musician. Slash was my absolute idol. I used to wear the top hat. I got my nose pierced because of him. So I went to music college, um, got what I needed to do in music, and then I think I was about 19. There was someone that I knew who got me back into wrestling because I used to watch it growing up. We used to go on holiday and have to get those, early flights. Taxi'd come pick you up at like 2 in the morning. And I remember seeing like Stone Cold hitting Vince with the pan in the hospital and stuff like that. And then we didn't watch it for ages, so I missed the whole like Gresham era and all that. But then I got back into it just round about when Daniel Bryan retired. And I remember watching it thinking I'd like to do that, but circumstances weren't right. But then my little sister used to do it. She had a couple of sessions. I don't know if you remember yourself. Um, and I watched her. I was like, I'd like to do this. Anyway, life happened. I finally moved out. Big world, little Leonie. And I came down and it just, I don't know, lit something inside me because I used to do martial arts as well. Got my black belt, got medals up and down the country for sparring and reforms. So wrestling in a way is a bit of a mixture of performance of music and the physicality of martial arts. And then ever since I've just fallen in love with it. Can't imagine my life without it.
Well, I don't know if I was there for your first session, but I was definitely there when you first started. I saw you. It is amazing seeing how far you've come because I remember you were really timid in the beginnings. You were worried that you were doing everything wrong, that the bumps weren't right, the lines weren't right. And the thing was, you were doing all right. For a beginner, you were definitely doing all right. Yeah, but you've certainly come into your own since then. You've captured your character. And going back a bit, I do remember you went on a bit of a winning streak when you first started in the UKW, which then, of course, culminated with your first WrestleBration where you faced Brooklyn for the women's title. It was title versus streak.
Can I just say, do you know what? So I knew I only had 3 matches where I were undefeated, and I was saying to my mate, my win record's 100%. I'm the best wrestler. It wound him up in real life, so I was like, oh, I can go with this. So the whole streak thing was just me being an idiot. I didn't actually think that, but it was just a funny thing. I'll let you carry on.
Well, that one thing, it's all about getting that kind of emotional reaction from an audience. So if you can get it from somebody in real life, winding them up, it's definitely going to wind your audience up because even they're going to look at it and think, hang on, undefeated streak. You're not Goldberg. Yeah, but that was the thing. You went into WrestleBration playing that streak like it was a real thing to be proud of. Like it was like this tower that nobody had ever scaled. But as I say, I'm going into your first WrestleBration. I mean, just walk us through that. Your first WrestleBration. Yeah.
Um, all I remember from that really is it was the first time in the 20-foot ring, and we got halfway through it, and I was dying. I used to wear denim black shorts, and they were digging into me, and I couldn't breathe. And we're just like, oh, I can't get through this. But it were a lot of fun. Like, she was good to work with. I remember working with her, I worked with her a few times. Um, but no, I just remember this ring's huge. That's all I could remember from that.
I mean, you did obviously the streak ended that night, but you kept going, didn't you? Because as we all know, right before the year from hell, which is what I call the pandemic, right before that, you became the first woman to hold the UKW Men's Academy Championship. Talk us through that. I mean, the lead up into that, was there like a big build up for you? Did you know it was coming, or was it like an on the spot situation?
I remember the graphic going up and seeing that I was in it. And I'm like, oh, I've always said I've wanted to wrestle the guys. I used to do like football and stuff like that in school, and always like worked with the guys like football stuff like that. So seeing it, I was like, oh, amazing! I get to work the guys. And then I turned up on the day and found out I was over, and again, I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it were gonna go to me. I don't know how much like I can say about behind the scenes, but okay. Um, I thought Steve were gonna win it or Tom Steele. I didn't think it were gonna be me, and I just couldn't get over it at all. And then the moment happened, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I didn't feel like I was worthy at that time. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I appreciated, what the company's done for me, but I didn't feel like it was my time yet. But then obviously lockdown happened, came back like longest reigning academy title champion, and just went with it from there.
Yeah. But speaking of lockdown, that was hard for everybody, regardless of wrestling, media, whatever. It was hard for everybody. How did you cope? Because I know what it was like to be out of wrestling, because wrestling's always been my sanctuary. How did you cope with it though? Because being out of wrestling for you just won the title. You no doubt on a high, really hoping to get storylines running forward. You'd retired the men's academy title. You brought back the women's academy title. So let's just go through what happened. If you don't mind talking about it, what happened with you during lockdown?
Honestly, in hindsight now, it was a bit of a blessing in disguise. So we only thought lockdown was what going to be 2 weeks a month. So I was like, oh, I can relax, recuperate, and then it just got longer and longer. So I worked out. I redid like a coat room in my flat into a workout room. Got stick-on mirrors on the wall. Watched all my matches, picked up on all my little mistakes, and got myself in good shape. So when we did eventually come back, it was like, okay, I can be taken seriously now. I can actually feel like I belong a little bit more, as opposed to just turning up. Oh, this is fun. Bye, thank you. Actually, want to do it a bit more seriously. So it was tough, but it was a bit of a blessing in retrospect because I got to work out and look at all my flaws on screen and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, now I think a lot of people are doing that, because I do know there were a lot of wrestling companies doing like online sessions over Messenger and Zoom. Because UKW did it with Sid Phoenix, Steel City did it because I know I joined in a lot of their sessions. I did join in a couple of UKW sessions as well, and it was a lot of cardio, a lot of weightlifting, which some people just don't even consider when thinking about wrestling. It's just like, oh, you go to wrestling training, you just running ropes and that. It's like, no, no, no. You need your cardio. You need your strength. You need your speed.
People think it looks easy, but it doesn't look easy.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. Everyone says you can do it. It's like, no, you can't do it unless you put in the effort. And I will tell that to anybody. I've never been pushed as hard as when I've been in wrestling. So, co- coming out of lockdown, back to UKW, back to the grind, back to wrestling, because by this point you've been booked in plenty of places. You've appeared on podcasts, so thank you for appearing on this one. Yeah, so we've come back. We've come out of lockdown. We're coming back to UKW. We're finally going to get the proper return of UKW, and the training sessions, as you will remember. We were boarded off because we had to do the whole what is it, social distancing. Yeah, we had to do that. How was coming back to training for you?
It was a little bit daunting because it was really just all cardio, and as much as you can work out at home, there's a difference between like a home cardio workout compared to in ring conditioning. So it was a little bit nerve wracking and not being able to like lock up and wrestle with people. A special guest in J-Ro Lewis, say hi to the people.
I'll see you down the road, people.
I had to. Um, but I was really grateful to be back. I remember that first bump, and it like just set me on fire. And I remember before lockdown, I could never flip bump. After lockdown, now I can flip bump. So it helped, but I was a bit nervous. But then, didn't we transition from wearing masks? Oh no, we wrestled Invisible Men, didn't we? And then transitioned to working with masks on. So it was all safe and prepared. But no, I was just glad to be back, as nervous as I was.
Yeah, as you say, getting in the ring, working with masks, you could only work so long as well, because you could not breathe in those things, and you could work maybe a small spot, a few moves with each other, run the ropes a couple of times, but there was no way you were going to be able to do like 3 minute rope running like we used to. So as I say, we've come back, we're back in at the grind. Suddenly, we're going back to stories. What, how were you approached about the story? Because you had to relinquish the academy title in order to make way for Genesis.
Yeah.
So how were you approached about that? I mean, what was your input into that?
I didn't know anything about it until it happened. I remember my first match back as Academy champion. It was against Kiara. I think it was Rebound. My memory's a bit dodgy. That was a really fun match. But as for stories, obviously, because everything had reset, I was like, what can I do to get myself the heat? So that's how I came back. Longest reigning Academy title champion. No one can touch me, however long it's been. So I faced Kiara for that. I was successful. A few more matches, and like I said, the Genesis Championship then came into play. So if the Genesis lot are listening, you're welcome, because it's because of me that you've all got a platform now. But off screen, I was happy to like make way for the newer guys. If it were going to lead to stories for them and opportunities, and I was more than happy to.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great thing when Genesis was first announced, because it didn't come into play until quite later on. But when it was first announced, it was a situation of how's this going to go down? Is it going to bring more people in? Which it did. So many people came in when they knew that we were going to have a training show and they'd be able to really get out there. And hey, so coming back from that, as you say, you relinquished the title. You also then went in to do double duty at that WrestleBration, because you were fighting for the vacant women's title against Alfie, I believe it was. And then, when you couldn't get that done, you then went for the dream ticket. So again, let's walk through that.
My first version back was Alfie. The version after was title against Sarah, and then against Kate.
Right. Okay. I've been cut off there. Yeah, but the thing was, you did actually win the dream ticket after you lost to Alfie. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. Bit cut off there. We got our wires crossed, but it's okay. I don't think they heard you because there's only one mic here. But yeah, let's go. So let's go to the match with Alfie and the dream ticket. How did all that work?
I was definitely worried that if I could keep up, because they were back to back. But luckily, because the dream ticket match was, I believe, a gauntlet match, I went on to right at the end, so I had a bit of time. That was a really fun match with Alfie. I do remember there was a clashing of heads and teeth. Her head got busted open. My tooth is still wobbly from that. But it's always a lot of fun working with Alfie, because we've worked together so much now. We basically know each other. And then the dream ticket match, I inserted myself last minute. Everyone booed me. They hated it. I loved it, and I got the win from it.
And as we know, you went on to win the women's title, and also, I think it was a couple of months after that, the Persian Empire was reborn, because you were part of the original Persian Empire, and then it was reborn again. And again, talk us through that, because you were quite a close knit group. Because we know that you and Mustafa Khan are good friends. You and Sheikh Maktoum are good friends as well. But this new version, it was you, Mustafa Khan, Johan Hunt, and Big Duncan, and eventually Joe Sedgwick came into it. So, was that like a situation where you would all hang out together after the shows, and like beyond the shows, would you be messaging each other and discussing potential storylines? Yeah, because some groups do, but some groups it's just for the show. So talk us through that.
We did have a couple of group chats where we'd speak the Empire, and we went out for a meal a couple of times as well to talk about things, because it was all seed planting with that. So it was Duncan and Mustafa first, and me and Johan were like slowly working together as a team. Because I remember everyone coming up to me like, "You're doing a love angle," and Johan, if you're listening, no offense, but I was like, "I hope not."
Yeah, I do actually remember a situation where it got caught on camera, all of you on the stage, and you're all raising each other's hands, and Big Duncan's hand slid into Johan's hand. Somebody zoomed in on it, and it became. I remember saying, "Yeah, the audience is shipping Leonie and Johan. Us lot backstage, we're shipping Duncan and Johan."
I remember that. That was so funny. We ripped into Johan for absolutely ages for that. It was so good. I'll never get that image out of my head. I might have to re-find that and put it up and be like, "Do you remember this, guys?"
Yeah. But yeah, as you say, you then went into the following Unberechenbar where you faced you lost the title to Sarah, and that led into you then winning it back from her, becoming the first ever two-time UKW Women's Champion. Second, yes, sorry, my
I will be the
bad.
first time, three-time women's champion.
There you go, prophecy fulfilled. But I mean, you still work in the UKW. You've been the Genesis general manager, which I spoke about with Case and Riley, and we all absolutely love that character because you've been a total bitch the whole time, but you play the character so well. It's like the audience loves to hate you, the viewers love to hate you, and unfortunately, here's a bit of a spoiler alert: we're actually here at WrestleBration Aftermath, and she's just lost her GM ship. Yeah, Leonie Rose is no longer the GM of Genesis. Talk us through your time on Genesis Ignite.
I really enjoyed it. When I first started, I didn't think that I'd ever be like with Genesis and stuff. I didn't ever think I'd be general manager.
Yeah, that was another thing. It started out with Mustafa Khan as general manager. How did you get into that? Was that plugged to you, or was there like a series of names came up, or
As far as I was aware, Mustafa had his own personal things going on, which is fine. It all happens to us. We're all real people. Um, so I remember being asked, "Will you come down tonight and just wear your smarts and just do these promos?" And I got called up into the office, and they were like, "Oh, we were talking about we need a heel who's good at talking to be the new general manager, and we mentioned you, and there weren't really any other names. Would you be happy doing it?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And then every week I'd panic about what I'd have to say, what I was doing. Everyone would be like, "You're gonna do fine," but I'd still be there just behind the curtain, heart racing. But it was a lot of fun. I like shouting at everyone. It was a lot of fun. And the whole story with Kaysen and Sebastian Mercer, that was so much fun to be a part of. Like it felt real almost at one point with how like deep it was going. It was a lot of fun.
yeah, I do remember that whole storyline. I mean, I went into great depth with that with Case, and as you say, it felt real because they pushed it to be real. They brought personal issues into it, and yeah, it was one of the most believable stories I've seen in wrestling, and it had such a great ending to it. But outside of UKW as well, you have of course been to other promotions. You're the GTM Women's Champion right now. You were at Non-Stop Action Wrestling where you had your own faction for a while. And were you the captain of that faction, or was it like just a group thing?
I think it was just a group thing. I don't think there was like any particular leader. I think they like looked to me as the experienced one, but it was definitely a team effort.
Yeah, the Guardians of Gallifrey, I believe that was. So you can tell how many nerds were in that. But you know what? Read the Bible. The geek will inherit the earth. Right. So as I say, I mean you're doing great in UKW. Still, you've just come off WrestleBration, great match with Shauna Reed. You took some right bumps on that. I mean, what was it like working Shauna Reed, who's been all over?
There was a lot of pressure. I wanted to be able to keep up because in my I doubt myself so much. I'm sure we all do, to be fair. But in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to keep up. What have I done to like deserve this? Not in a bad way to Shauna, but like, how have I got myself in this situation? But it was so much. When I had a bin emptied on my head, I got hit with a bin on my head. It was. I love those kinds of matches where you can just have fun with it, and there's not so much pressure. And Shauna were great. She were like, "Oh, I'm off to bigger companies next week. Can I name them?" She were like, "I'm off to WWE, AEW," and I was like, "Oh no, the last thing I want to do is hurt you before you go there." My gosh. But no, we kept each other safe, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember I was downstairs when that match started. I went upstairs to get coffee or something, and I just had a sneak peek. I looked through and I saw you guys out in the audience, and she picked you up and dropped you on the barrier face first, and I was just like, okay, I'm staying to watch the rest of this because I had just done a hardcore match that night, and I was just looking and thinking, why didn't we do this? Well, it's false count anywhere for you, so you had to do that. You had to get out there. Let's sidetrack a bit off wrestling for a moment because personally, you've been through college. You did, of course, meet the love of your life through wrestling. But no, let's go. We won't get into that. That is a personal matter that is not for me. But yeah, we will go into what you studied at college because what was it again?
At college music.
Yeah. And you've got your degree as well, haven't you?
I've only got one more module until I get my degree. I'm studying forensic psychology.
Yeah, there you go. CSI UKW. But yeah, just talk us through that because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that, well, I hope there's a lot of people out there listening to this who would, like to go to college and get these degrees and get into stuff like psychology and criminal psychology and that. So talk us through what led you to that.
Without making like the podcast super dark and deep, I went through like my own mental health stuff. Um, went through a pretty rough time, and I'm not knocking any of the nurses, but some of them don't have the experience. They've just read what they need to read and then they can do it. So I wanted to be that change. I wanted to be the one that could understand people. And then the forensic side, I really like true crime. I promise I'm not one of those white girls that just obsesses over serial killers, but the brains like really interest me. Like, why have you done that? I like stub a table and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, table. So I don't get how their brains can do that. So I think it was just a mix of wanting to make the mental health world a bit of a better place and understand the brain a bit more. And I do it through the Open University because I was a bit of a delinquent as a teenager. But the Open University is for anyone and everyone. You can do it around your own schedule. And employers still see that degree as genuine, if not more so, because you're doing all your time management yourself. You're making sure you get all your assignments handed in. So hopefully in the next 3 years, because I need to get my master's after, I can be a licensed psychologist.
There's a new gimmick for her to bring to UKW. Yeah, well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for being so open about that, about the mental health issue you went through, because I know that's still got to be difficult for you to talk about, because it's difficult for anybody. But I mean, this is another thing I'd like to actually put out there to anybody listening. There are a lot of people that really do suffer mental health issues, and I would like to put, not so much push, but I'd like to encourage them to find somebody that they can talk to, and maybe find their own way of, not, I don't want to say dealing with it because it sounds like such a cop out, but yeah, processing, moving beyond it and using it to as like a stepping stone to something else, to like a better future for themselves. So I'm very thankful to you for bringing that up. Um, right. So you've got the degree coming up. Well done. And you said earlier that you did music. I mean, it does seem like a bit of a jump, doesn't it? Music into criminal psychology. Was there an overlap, or was it just like you started with one thing, but you sort of moved on to something else?
Yeah, I started with music and then I don't know, my brain started doing brain things. And then for some reason I did like a 5 month public service course, dropped out of that, got into a bit of a rebellious stage. And it was only when I moved out of my family home and living by myself, I was like, right, I need to be accountable for myself. Um, and then due to all the mental health stuff, that's where I was like, oh, I could study psychology and understand the brain a bit better. And then within like 2 months of that, I discovered UKW. And then between doing my degree and coming here, it's done my mind absolutely wonders. There's still like down days, but this place has genuinely saved me, and I can't be more thankful.
Yeah, I have heard a lot of stories personally, talking to people that about how when you come into wrestling with mental health issues, it really is a good way to focus your mind and get you past that point and realizing the next point. So yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that because it's something that I really try to get outside the kayfabe and more into the real stories behind what pushes somebody to do these things, to do like wrestling and as you said, degrees in criminal psychology and that. Right. You talked about Alfie earlier on for wrestling her for the UKW Women's title. Now you've wrestled her so many times. You wrestle her? You wrestled her recently for the GTM Women's title. But the woman that you actually won that from, it was because you were the first ever, I believe, yes, in a tournament. It came down to you and Kirsty Love, who you've got a lot of history with. Uh, what was that like? Not just wrestling Kirsty Love, because obviously we know that's going to be great because she's ace, but being the first ever women's champion in GTM. I mean, that's quite a responsibility because you've got to set the standard for the next person to break. So talk to us through that.
I just remember on the day being really nervous because I was the first ever women's match at GTM as well. So to go from the first ever women's match to the first ever women's champion, there was definitely pressure. And I remember being told me and Kirsty had to go for like 25 minutes, half an hour. And I was like, oh no. But I'm so thankful that they like believed in me to be able to do that. But it was really nerve wracking. You're going to ask all these questions, but how did you feel about that? Really scared, Tommy. Just I get nervous so much, but I feel like if you don't get nervous, there's something not right. But no, once I'd won it, I couldn't. I remember being sat there looking at the title, being like, oh my gosh, because it was my first title away from UKW that I'd won as well. So nervous, tired, and then really thankful at the end.
You know, that's it. I mean, the audience was behind you because this is the thing. You're heel at UKW. Everywhere else, you seem to be a babyface. You know, I mean, that is that difficult because you're so great at being a heel in UKW and you perfected that. It's got to be like a second nature for you when you get to a wrestling ring. Yeah, is it more difficult trying to fight against that in order to be the babyface?
I've got like it's like splitting my brain. So when I know I'm being heel, I know that I can switch on the bitch Leonie. Whereas I'm being the good guy, I'm like, okay, don't be a bitch. You've got to be nice to people. But like, it's difficult in a way. I do prefer being heel purely because I've done it for longer and I know all the like personally all the little nuances. Um, but I enjoy being face as well. I'm just happy to be here and wrestle. But I remember once I did a pushing limit show here at UKW and then had to go to GTM straight after, and that went from heel to face within like an hour. So it was very right. I'm not a heel anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's jumping the audiences. It is tricky, especially because you do get a lot of fans that will follow you to different organizations. So they'll see you in one place being a bad guy, but they'll want to cheer you. And then you'll go to the other place to be the good guy, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, now I can cheer you, but I've just seen you do bad things.
I get a lot of comments like that. People will be like, "It's so weird seeing you as a good guy. It's so weird seeing you as a heel."
Yeah, it's that's the wrestling business for you. I mean, that's what makes it so great. Is was it telling stories all the time? We're doing soap operas. We're making movies, you know. And regardless of what anyone says, I mean, I know a lot of people. There is a big discourse between is it pro wrestling or is it sports entertainment. The fact is, they're the same thing. You know, it's all about entertaining an audience through the sport of pro wrestling. Yeah, and we are all down for that. And yeah, I can't. I know that sports entertainment was just a phrase that a certain billionaire came up with to avoid a tax dodge. So, but it is the same thing. I mean, I don't look at it any different. I watch WWE, I watch AEW, and I don't see the difference between them. I mean, I know that there is differences because they're different companies, but it's entertainment to me, and it's pro wrestling. So, right, we've got these questions from certain fans. Yeah, because I asked people to put some questions in. So we'll start with the first one. Are there any skills or talents outside of a wrestling school that have benefited your in-ring career? Ooh, that is a good one.
That is a good one. Funnily enough, doing about psychology, that really helps with wrestling because then you understand, well, why would I do this in the ring? Why would I do that? Does this make sense? I'm not really a spot wrestler. I like telling a story and it making sense. Even if it's something really a simple structure, as long as it makes sense and with like connected to that one kid in the crowd, that's what it is for me.
Yeah, even if that one kid's booing you and you're trying to push it even further. Right, next question. Yeah, very much a fan here. How does it feel to be a phenomenal female talent in the local wrestling scene, and has there been any hardships in regards to that?
That's another good question. That's so funny because I don't see myself as like a phenomenal female talent. It's just a lot of fun, and if I can help people along the way, then I'm just happy to do that. But I'm a bit taken aback because I don't see myself, I suppose, as how other people see me. It's just fun for me. It takes my mind off things, whether that's getting cheered or being booed. And what was the last part? Has there been any hardships? Um, it did take me a while to like prove myself, I think, and like earn the respect of the people around me. And I think it's so easy as well. for people to be like, oh, it's easy for women's wrestlers because like your backside's out or you're dressed inappropriate, so you don't get taken seriously. But I've just been determined to prove my point and prove that I can hit just as hard as the men.
Well, I do remember because you wrestled for me back in February for my charity show, wrestling for Kirkwood Hospice, and somebody messaged me afterwards, a friend of mine who wanted to do a charity mud wrestling match, and she actually asked me if any of the women on that show would be up for that. I said to her, I don't think they would be, to be honest, because women's wrestlers, they have worked a long time to be taken seriously. It does. Yeah, I'm not saying that they'd look down on that sort of thing because it's entertainment in the end, but I don't think they'd be up for it because, like I said, they've really worked hard to take themselves seriously.
We went from bras and panties matches to being taken seriously. We don't want to revert.
Exactly, yeah. Right. I'm going to take this next question. I'm going to widen it. It's if you could win any championship ever, which one and why? I'm going to widen this up to the entire wrestling world. Right? Championship ever, which one and why?
That's a weird one because I never thought I could like wrestle as a career. I never thought I'd be good enough. So I never really like put thought into that. But obviously, you want to think of like the WWE Women's Championship, the AEW Women's Championship. I think those would be pretty cool to win. I don't know. I haven't put like again thought into. I didn't even think I'd win a championship here at UKW, so it's not something that's really crossed my mind. I'm sorry if that's a bit of a cop out answer.
I mean, it's not a cop out answer. It's an honest answer. I mean, people think about winning titles all the time, and it's just a question of you know, a lot of wrestlers with ideas of being champion, they will be thinking the big leagues, WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, and New Japan. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a cop out answer at all. Right? Do you have any dream wrestling goals, like where you would like to wrestle? And I'm not saying that you have to specifically answer the where would you like to wrestle. I'm saying dream wrestling goals like that.
I remember one of my goals was to wrestle outside, and I did that last weekend, so I'm happy with that. Places like Progress, True Grit, that'd be fun wrestling goals. Again, I didn't think it'd ever like take off for me, so it's not something. Maybe I should start putting thought in. I should have read these questions and given better answers because I feel really bad. It's not a case of that I don't care about the company and I haven't like thought about the wrestling business. I just didn't think. I didn't think that I'd be a proper part of it. I didn't think I'd ever be taken seriously. But just anything, I'm just happy to be a part of it all.
Yeah, we're just listening upstairs right now. We are at WrestleBration Aftermath, and Damian Black has just become the new UK Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion. Right, final question from the fans here. Dream opponent. And, this is a question that every wrestler gets asked, so you should always be prepared for this one.
I've got a few for this actually. I have thought about this. People like Alexis Falcon, Lana Austin, but then if you want like big names, someone like Charlotte Flair, Shawn Michaels. I know he doesn't wrestle so much anymore, but Shawn Michaels, I'd have loved to have like faced him because he makes anyone look good. I remember doing a podcast previously and I said AJ Styles as well. I mean, I wouldn't be able to keep up, but it'd be a good dream, wouldn't it?
I think you could keep up with AJ Styles because I think he'd work hard with you. Right. Obviously, we're coming to the end right now. Leonie, I'd love to have you back another time because I know you've got so much more to talk about because we've got Ensor, you've got GTM, you've got all the other companies that you've wrestled in up and down the country. But as I say, we're just finishing WrestleBration Aftermath here. So thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah, Leonie Rose, if you've got any more questions for her, don't be afraid to send them to me because I will have her back.
And I will be more prepared. I wrestled 2 matches tonight. Give me a break.
Yes, she has. Yes, she's lost her GM ship, so she's sad about that. But she also beat Paul Hubris, so there you go.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, so Leonie, as always, Team Academy forever. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
We finished?
We'll see you later.
This was Tales of the Unberechenbar. Good night.